All right. Hey there, Brooke. How's it going today?
It's going well. It's going well. As we're recording this, we have the Orioles starting off playoffs this weekend. So super excited going to one of the games. So hopefully by the time this is going live, they've won the World Series. But I feel like it's like an episode of Back to the Future a little bit. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Like you sound so optimistic and happy right now. And the person
I
who's there
know.
and listening, who's a baseball fan, is like, I don't know about that.
Didn't do so well, Brooke. Let's hope
No,
I'm
yeah.
wrong there. We're right.
No. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. You guys deserve it. I wouldn't say that football wise, but baseball wise, you guys deserve it for sure. All good. Well, we're here with Kevin. I would love to hear, Kevin, a little bit of background about you and kind of your, start in the industry, a little summary of that. And we always like to hear this too. How did you originally meet Brooke, and how did you kind of get connected to the Vintory world as well during that process?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. The quick and dirty is 2008, 2009 was a really interesting time in my life, and time to make a change, time to do something independent. And because of global financial market crashing around me, had a vacation rental in the past, located here in Telluride, was a distant owner. And it was that time, 2009, and it was time to do something different. And looked around at the market, and quite frankly, went, I'm ready to do something different, and launched a business called Latitude 38 Vacation Rentals, basically like a very traditional entrepreneur, like, oh, I can do it better. We had a slightly different model, slightly different way of doing things, but it was just, I think we can just do it better, and be super focused on that. Did that for about 12 years and then sold to Vacasa in 2021, excuse me. And currently a free agent. So,
Hey, here's a fun fact for you, Conrad. So
Yeah.
Telluride is at Latitude 38. Go figure.
Yeah.
That's the name of his company. But so where I'm sitting right now here
That's right.
is also Latitude 38 here in Baltimore, Maryland. So actually Annapolis, Maryland, where I grew up,
Annapolis.
is
Mhm.
Latitude 38. So it's funny. I remember one time going to latitude38.com thinking I was going to Kevin's website, and it took me to a restaurant in Annapolis.
Yes.
And I was like, wait a sec. Why? Well, I was like, it blew my mind. I was like, what is going on here? And then I looked, and it's looked at the map, and sure enough, we're right at the same latitude.
Same latitude, and there's a sailing magazine. I think that I don't know if it's still out there, and we'd occasionally get a phone call about, boat questions and things like that. And we're like, man, you're a little off, but you're close, but you're off.
Got to
I
talk
met
about We're
I
talking about
met
that.
Brooke in in conferences and looking through and working with him at LiveRes, and then working with him and just talking with him about his new venture, and been following along.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you here, Kevin. And
Thanks.
I like that. It's such a good story about, I guess, topography, because you can be at the same latitude, and yet the weather couldn't be, more different from Maryland over to Colorado, where you're based, Kevin. So I like that. Well, we'll dive in then to the top 10 mistakes that you've made, and looking forward to kind of hearing a little bit more about the ones you made, and maybe the ones that you learned from and corrected as you kind of grew the business and eventually successfully exited it a few years ago, as you mentioned. So number one, ownership. If you plan on keeping your company for a while and staying relatively small, then never give up majority ownership control. You did later sell, but at one point you had this point of view. What was kind of the origin story of not giving up control, and what ended up happening in your business before the sale there?
Yeah, this one is painful because you can't really go back, right? So this is a message to all of those that are starting off, and sometimes you have to, and this is in any business, right? Like, sometimes you need that money. You need that money to do the startup. And at that time, I chose to take money to help me during my startup. Part of me, I look back and I go, damn it. I wish I would not have taken that money, because then I would have held on to majority. I would have, and then maybe been successful, and then maybe had a successful exit, and all of, those funds could have come to me. Um, I took the money, and I don't look back at it and go, well, damn it, because if I didn't take that money, maybe I wouldn't have started the company. Maybe I wouldn't have had the resources to do X, Y, and Z. And so it's just a point to folks to really consider it and really think long and hard before you take money or before you give up control. Think long and hard. Maybe endure a little bit more pain. But there's a certain point that every situation is very different, and I'm not saying don't ever do it, because sometimes you need it, or it's really expensive and you're going to need those outside resources. But just take a long time to think about it before you accept those funds, because there's no going back.
Yep. Conrad, this sounds familiar, right? Jennifer Mucha. We just had this conversation
Yeah,
with her yesterday. It was
absolutely.
she took some money in the early days, and she worked her butt off to finally pay it back. But it was a very painful. And she even said if had her attorney not been really good and worded some of that operating agreement just right, she would have lost the entire business.
Yeah.
She talked about, and we talked about this, Kevin. It was so often these companies celebrate the raises that, hey, so-and-so just raised $8 million. So-and-so just raised $12 million. Well, that's just one part of it. And that should we really be celebrating the capital raises, or should we be celebrating building, bootstrapping really good, solid businesses?
I hear you.
The other thing that comes to mind, Brooke, we've talked a little bit about the Bezos thing about a one-way door or a two-way door. And I think the type of financing and money that Kevin was talking about seems like one of those one-way doors. A lot of things are two-way doors. You can go in, and then if you make a mistake, go back. It seems like from what you're saying, Kevin, this was a one-way door. You went in it, and there was no going back once you did that, right?
Yeah, and it's a good point just in terms of capital structure too. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to structure it. It's not just an equity sale. You could do loans. You can, friends and family type things. It just became a point of contention, where I ran the day to day. I did everything. It was my baby. It was everything. I did everything. And for the most part, the partners were fine. And if we ever needed money or wanted to do something, they were relatively supportive. Great. It just came time, to expanding into a different market, or growing it over here or doing something else. And it was like, okay, Kevin, go ahead. And full stop, and not, hey, and there's this additional incentive, or we'll dilute so you can grow. There was none of that. So it is, in terms of the structure, there's a lot of things that you could do to make it more comfortable potentially for you. So it's just think long and hard.
Mm. Well, you mentioned growth, and maybe that dovetails perfectly then into number 2 on your list. Number 2, growing too big, too fast. Have a plan and know your cash flow. The lack of preparation will hurt you, your guests, owners, and your brand. Know the difference between growth and profitability. Having more properties for the sake of having more homes to satisfy your ego is different than having a more profitable home. So what was kind of the lesson here on growth and growing the right way, maybe as opposed to growing in a vanity way?
I mean, the quick and dirty is when an owner comes to you and says to you, hey, you're spread too thin, or you used to do this, or man, you need to hire more people, and they're pointing it out to you. It's probably too late, right? That actually happened to me a couple different times, where you are trying to run your business, you're making money, and you're not, and it is that chicken and egg of, when do you hire? If you hire too soon, you might lose some money, but if you hire too late, your quality might suffer. So it's a very difficult balance. And because it is that difficult balance, I would often say yes to kind of anyone that came through the door. And then I would be super flexible on contract terms, or super flexible on, oh, you only want to rent in the winter time. Sure, no problem. I would say yes. It just makes it more complex. Everything operationally becomes more complex. The more you're bringing on, the onboarding process is so hard and so important. If offboarding is so hard and so important, but the churn of it really puts an operational strain on your team. And I was saying yes to everything because I wanted to get to a certain point. And it wasn't like, oh, I got to get to 200 properties because that makes me the champion. It wasn't that. It was more about I just want to continue to grow. And if I grow, then I can hire those people versus thinking about, which properties should I target? What are the most profitable properties? And then at what point should I or can I afford to slot people in? So it was just grow. Oh, look at that. We have all these homes. Now I can add people versus doing it intelligently.
I fell into this trap too. I mean, for me, it was all about growth. I was so
Yeah.
focused. I set goals at the beginning of every year, and it was all related to inventory count. And I failed to look at the bottom line. I failed to look at the profitability of the business, which is so just moronic. Like all I cared about was growth.
Yeah.
And that was my metric of success. And I would do whatever it took to get that unit count. And that was the metric I was going after. But in the long run, like, you can't spend that. You know what I mean? Like you can eventually obviously make that profitable, but we definitely lost money in those early years because we were so focused on that growth. Now you can, step off the gas and get more efficient, and kind of slow down that sales and marketing go to market. But we were so focused on growth that and looked at profitability second that it really it hurt us. And it's if I could go back, I'd do the same thing. I'd still grow fast, but maybe in a little bit more controlled manner for sure. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but taking on the right properties.
Totally.
No. It's an extreme example, but I've worked with a property manager or a vacational owner, excuse me, not a property manager, for a few years, who has 2 listings and he does 1.2 million gross between 2 listings. So I mean, it's an extreme example. Obviously, very few properties meet that criteria, but it goes to show you there's people that are grinding away at 30 condos that make half that, and there's 2 properties out there in some markets that can do that much if they're the top of the top, tippity top from a market performance standpoint.
Pretty good.
Number 3, let's go in a different direction here with you, Kevin. Number 3, bending the rules with guests, owners, and employees. Try very hard to not do it. So for example, if you have a cancellation policy, stick to the cancellation policy. Your management fee is set, so don't give a client a concession in order to add that one special unit. This kind of alludes to what you just said a moment ago.
Yep.
Or the rule is no dogs in the office. Don't allow someone to bring in their new puppy just this one time. Try to hold the line. So what was kind of the lesson here? We talked about it from an inventory perspective, but it seems like you also talked here about guests and employees as well, not being able to just kind of continually bend. And
Totally. And the guest and employee maybe got me more than the owner side. I mean, offering a volume discount for someone that's bringing on 3-4 properties, and they're going to produce 500, 600,000. That's good business, right? Like that's a smart move. Bend those rules. Where it really got me and then really sucked up a lot of time is on the employee side. And maybe employees first and then guests second. But I absolutely did the dog thing. And it was this one gal, she needed her dog. It was she got this new puppy, and it was, a service animal and emotional support dog. And I was like, oh gosh, and she needs it. She's going through a rough time. I said, okay, that's fine. And then soon after, there were 5 dogs in the office and barking, playing, and being dogs, right? Like it was mayhem. And then you have good dog owners and you have bad dog owners and dogs that are barking and then they're going to the bathroom in the office and it's just out of hand, right? To a point where I think I made way too many assumptions in like, hey, people will take care of their dogs. Like it's in the office. They'll be even more mindful. No. If you're not a good dog owner outside, you're probably not going to be a good dog owner inside. And so, like to the point where we had to go, making those assumptions, that was not smart. And now we need a office dog policy. And we had to go through and do all of these different policies, and then you're policing the policies, and you're just taking so much time out of your day doing that. And then again, slippery slope. How do you change it? Right now you got to kick. You can't just leave, I'm going to grandfather one dog. No, you can't do that. You got to kick all dogs out, which makes all of the employees unhappy. So it's again slippery slope. I absolutely made this mistake on the dogs. Say you could do the same with oh, can I take the company car home over the weekend because I'm gonna move furniture, whatever. And then something happens, and then like it's just all of those things. So it's like if you have to think about it and go, should I? Probably don't. Like you can be a nice. Like I think I just was trying to be the nice guy and got bit by it. And it's also not to say not doing those things doesn't mean you're a jerk or the bad guy. It's just it makes it easier maybe for you.
What got me with this was we made exceptions on just about every single contract. So now we have 500 different policies and rules, and no easy at the time we had no easy way of understanding like who had the exceptions. So we're literally like going back into paper files to like read through some exception we made on one property owner's management agreement about like their guest fee can only be a certain amount. And it just, I mean, the logistics of that was just unbelievable. We finally, after doing it for a little while here and we realized how bad it was, we ended up saying, all right, if we have it, we had like an addendum, like for any kind of exceptions on the management or contract. And we made sure we put that in like one specific section in our property management software. So at least we could go in there, but we kind of limited it to certain areas. So we kind of go through our contract and say, look, these are like, and we didn't tell the owners this obviously, but these are the areas that are red. You cannot change any word in it. These are areas that are, green that can be changed, and if it does get changed, it goes into this section of the PMS, just so you can kind of pull it up easily if anybody has, a customer on the call. But imagine trying to dig through 500 paper copies of contracts to understand the exception you made for any single owner. It's a pain in the ass to say the least.
And the owner's going to remember that for sure. They're going to remember the
Oh yeah,
exception. But yeah.
They only have one property to remember,
Yeah,
Right,
and
exactly.
you're going to mess it up, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to remember. You can't remember 500 contracts worth of those details. So thus, you'll mess it up, and then you got a problem. That is one thing that I would say for the big property management company that I did work for. They didn't change it. The contract was the contract,
Yep.
and it's that's stiff and not flexible and not local. But
Right.
man, you sure understand why.
Yeah.
Because the
You
contract's
have
the contract.
scale.
You kind of
When
have
you've got
to.
tens of
you know?
thousands. Yeah, it does
Yeah,
make it more
exactly.
straightforward. No, that's a good point. I was curious, Kevin, this wasn't in your mistakes list to my knowledge, but do you think some of those employee bending rules were because you're in a market where labor is really tough? So maybe your concern was if I upset, Marie and Marie leaves, then man, it's going to be tough to replace her. Do you think that was part of it? I'm just curious.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. And I probably didn't have I had like a 4 or 5 strike policy, not just a 3 strike policy, largely for that reason. Because labor, 100%, Conrad, labor market's so tough here. And it's a big learning curve. I mean, like I always say, it's like it's an easy, hard business, right? Like the business is easy. You make a reservation, they come and they stay at the house and everything works, right? That part's easy. And then life happens, and then the homes happen, and operationally it happens. And like, it takes a while to learn all of these different systems and each home is its own system. And man, it takes a long time to teach them up. So yeah, I would definitely bend over backwards for that reason, for sure.
Yeah, it's just something that I think can be challenging just working with people in different markets. There's some markets where they don't worry about that. They know if Marie leaves or John leaves, well, I don't want that to happen, but I can replace them a little bit easier because they just have a bigger pool of folks to work with. Let's head over to number 4 then, just kind of keep things rolling here, Kevin. Number 4, not starting out with a higher owner management fee. Once you set it, there's no turning back, and you deserve every penny. So how'd you kind of adjust the fees as things went along? What was the initial fee? Where did it end up later
Yeah,
on?
so we stayed at 75/25 for the entire time. We had our property management fee that was X amount per bedroom per month. So maybe a 4-bedroom was an additional $400 a month. And honestly, that was a good model because that paid out every month. People started, like, as other companies started going, oh, well, 60/40 is not the model anymore, and this is what Latitude's doing, and they came up with their own kind of the local market started going down to like 70/30 ish. We stayed pretty flat at 75.25, but started backing away from the property management fee toward the end a little bit. Um, my point there is, starting at 75.25, man, it's a world of difference between 75.25 and 70.30. Those 5 points, that's a lot of money. I think it was one of those that I wanted to, early on be the kind of market leader, wanted to come in very aggressive and grab units. And I didn't have the confidence. I had a lot of confidence in what we did and how we did it, but I didn't have the confidence to raise that, to change it, because it was a competitive market, and I can make excuses, but I just didn't do it. We would raise housekeeping fees. We'd take a look at that, which we talk about in one of these. We probably should have taken a look at that more often. We'd raise our labor rates every once in a while. So we did do some market adjustments, but this one, it's another one, like, set it to where it's a little uncomfortable, like really understand the market, and really understand as you're going into the market, are you gonna be the low cost leader? Is that your strategy, right? Are you just going to come in and I'm going to undercut? Okay, you can do that. Be Walmart, right? Be Costco. Or are you going to be like, I'm at or above what, if the market's at 70.30, be at 70.30 and own it and really deliver on it. I have friends and colleagues that, routinely upped their management fee. Um, I, I didn't have those stones. So, I was really impressed when people would tell me that they would do that. I just never did. So because I never did, I should have assessed a little bit more and maybe come in like right in the middle of the market.
Well, Kevin, you're not getting any sympathy from me. Ocean City, the going rate was anywhere between 13 and 16%. So
See,
it's
man.
super challenging and obviously a very seasonal market. But one piece of advice I heard somebody recommend, and I thought this was actually fantastic, is exactly what you just said. It's virtually impossible to increase your rates. So what he would do is, let's just say, for example, he wanted to be at 30%. He would discount at 25%, for that first year or
Mm.
first 2 years. And then he would say, look, at the end of the 2 years, if you don't like it, it's going to go up to 30% at the end of the 2 years. If you're not happy with our services, because he was so confident in his management services that he knew
Mhm.
that he could, get it, if you will, then it's going to go up. And, you can decide at that point. And he didn't have anybody. It's a lot easier to sell it that way, that
Yeah.
you're selling it. It is 30%. We're giving you a 1 year, we're giving you a 2 year discount, but it will ratchet up
Yeah.
at the end of the point. It's a lot easier to sell it that way than just, sell to 25% and then, shock them 2 years later by, hey, we just increased our commission by 5 points.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah, it makes it challenging. Brooke, I talked the other day with Jade, and she was saying that that's like the first question that someone's going to ask. They're going to call, a phone lead might, oh, that's the first thing they want to know. And she was talking about controlling the conversation. And I think that's a good example of it. It's like, well, I can tell you my fee, but there's a lot more that we do. And let me tell you the process, and all those kind
Yeah.
of pieces make a huge difference for sure.
Because they don't know what to ask. Homeowners do not
Right.
know the questions to ask. So what do they ask? What's your commission? That's the only
Yep.
thing
Sounds
you're
like an
trained to
easy
do.
one.
Right.
Yeah.
So have a rebuttal ready to go.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's head on over to number 5 then. So this kind of talks about hiring, which we talked about a little bit before, just with regards to like a lower labor pool, and maybe this one ties into it a little bit, Kevin. So tell us about that. But number 5, hiring when there might be a cultural fit, then trying to change a person to make them fit, and then just not realizing that that person is not a fit and having to let them go. You work in a small office in a small town. Sometimes you have to make the hard decision to remove the bad seed before they negatively impact all the facets of your company. So maybe go deeper into the hiring pieces. What were kind of some adjustments you made, and how'd you get better at it as it went along?
Yeah, better at it. I don't know if I ever got better at it, to be honest with you. Like, I think if going back on it, I would have. There's so many other good tools out there these days, to assess skills and assess candidates. I should have used those. I used my gut. I would talk to folks and be like, okay, cool, and really try to understand how they, operated Were they hard workers, and kind of test around, working hard, because this is a hard business, right? Like, you were working crazy long hours. We are super, super seasonal. And in those, high seasonal times, you're working a lot. And so you need people that are hard workers. You also need team players. So I test around team players. Um, and sometimes we would really need someone. So, you might loosen up the reins on those hiring, those skills, or those questions, because you're like, that's close enough. And so I think I would probably use some of the tools that are out there. That I think would have helped me more. I think I should have maybe involved more of the team members. We had different kind of, I'll call them like divisional heads or department heads, and they would obviously be involved in the hiring process. But I should have maybe slowed down and gotten more people involved in that, and then really listened to what their feedback was. Because if multiple people came back and said, I don't know if that's going to be a good fit, or, I've seen this person around town, because it is a small town, and you see people in their personal lives, and it's not, you don't really want that to impact who you're hiring, but it impacts who you're hiring, if you see them doing certain things around town. And so I probably should have trusted that and used a few more tools. Uh, and, 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 and because it is a tough labor pool, I definitely, like I mentioned before, I had many strikes. I should have, again, held fast. Have a 3-strike rule, have a 2-strike rule, whatever the rule is, stick to that rule. But I would definitely bend over backwards, bleeding heart, like, someone's going through a tough time. I would. I would step up, or ask others to step up that I could count on to do the work. And it frankly, it's just not fair. I would be very everyone, egalitarian in terms of how I would be very fair to everyone, and allow everyone. I would give everyone those strikes, but I would also then rely on, kind of my stronger players to help pick up the slack. So that's tough, right? So I definitely would bring more people in. Definitely have some fancy tools to help me in the hiring process. But at a certain point, if it's not a fit, and it's really dragging your culture down and your team down, you gotta think what's best for the team. Even though it might be best for you. Like, I had people that were really good with me, and they would do anything I asked, but they were jerks in the office. And it's like, what's more important? The team. The team's more important. And that's tough, because, man, they're really helping me do this one thing, but wow, they're really impacting the rest of the organization. That's more important.
I think everyone struggles with this from the cultural fit and just getting those right people. And over the years, after interviewing and hiring for probably close to 25 years or over 25 years, I think I've kind of narrowed it down to like 4 things. The first is, again, we talk about this all the time, but leveraging psychometric personality assessment tools like predictive index and culture index. And secondly, really following a very set structure of interview questions.
Yeah.
Like, create an interview skeleton and stick to it and score it, and have your other team members do it. Which leads me to like the third point is, from the cultural fit, like, have the team interview them, multiple people, anybody they're going to report to and talk to, have them interview them, have them score, make sure it's a good cultural fit. And the thing that never happens, it's like number 4, it's reference check. Like, it's not just calling the people that they give you references. Dig around. You can figure out who they know. You can find out where they work, especially if it's in a small town, small community, small industry. Somebody that's worked for them. But keep going and keep going and keep going until you get that person that actually doesn't say something positive about them. And you just keep asking and keep finding additional people that are connected to them. You will find somebody eventually that says something negative, but at least you have context. Now, was it the second call? Was it the 5th call? Was it the 12th call? You're going to get somebody eventually that says something pretty negative, and at least you have some good context around it. Because look, if you've been around the block a couple times, very, very, very few people are going to have 100% of the people saying positive things about them all the time.
Totally.
Yeah. Right on. Well, let's kind of head over to number 6 then, kind of going more down the communication path. Number 6, forgetting to prioritize communication. Timely communication is the key to everything. Share the good news, communicate the bad news, and know that no communication is never a good strategy. So I think Lino was a Brooke who I think gave great information here about owner communication. And we were talking about when owners don't hear anything, they assume the worst is the gist of, I think, what he was saying.
Yeah.
So what was kind of your path here, Kevin? And is this just an owner thing or is this a team thing or?
Oh, it's both. It's totally both. And I, gosh, I stole that from someone. I forget who I stole it from in terms of, you must deliver. It might have been like, it was Warren Buffett. That's a Warren Buffett-ish quote, where he's like, I can take, bad news. I can take obviously good news, but I can't take no news. And I was like, that's it, right? Like, and that's the thing, because we have these, and you can make all the excuses in the world, right? Like, oh, we were so busy, which is true. Like, you're so busy, and there's so many, you're getting 100 emails a day, and you got all these phone calls, and you got owners asking you questions, and guests, and employees just pounding you with questions. Like, so it's easy to make excuses to be like, oh, I'll get to that tomorrow. But you have to prioritize it. You have to, and you have to especially prioritize the bad news, right? Like, and people can deal with the bad news. Like, that's what I found is owners can deal with the bad news of, hey, your boiler went down. And here's what we're going to do about it, right? Like, have a plan. Here we got 3 plumbers lined up. They're going to have bids, blah, 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 blah. I got it under control. But to not tell someone about that, it just makes the problem bigger and bigger. I think the problem is the same from the guest side. Calling a guest ahead of time and being like, hey, I'm so sorry, the hot tub, which is, of course, the sole reason why you booked your reservation, died. We live in Telluride. There are 2 hot tub people. We're going to get to it as fast. But tell them ahead of time so it's not a surprise, right? So you're trying to eliminate the surprise, and no communication is the worst of all, right? It is just for everyone, right? Because the guest shows up, they're pissed off, they get even more agitated if there's a problem. Same with owners, and then also with the team, like you can't be very honest with the team, tell them what's going on. Did you hit your goals? Did you not hit your goals? What's going on? They know, right? Like, they know what's happening. If they see Brooke walking around the office and he's all grumpy, what's going on? Like, tell me. You don't have to tell them everything, but you got talk to them. Tell them what's going on. It builds trust. It's all of those things. So yeah, I stole that quote. I'm fairly certain it's from Warren Buffett, and it's just so true. It's hard because you have to prioritize it. You have to make it a priority.
It came up in the book all the time. And there was 3 different major categories with it. There was obviously the owner communication, there was guest communication, and then there was team communication. But I've got a team member on my team, Rob Holderness. He says it all the time. In the absence of information, people fear the worst.
That's
I'll
true.
say it again. In the absence of information, people fear the worst. So you're better off over communicating. But there's a couple great quotes from the book, like Jason Sprinkle says, you can never have enough owner communication. You build trust and relationships with open, honest, transparent, and frequent communications. There is very little that can be cured with great owner communication. And then Lino Maldonado said, don't underestimate the importance of proactive communication to owners, even when it's bad news. So
that's it.
Yeah.
And it's also you kind of control the narrative too. We did that with COVID. We did that. I bet most people did, because when that went down, it was spring break, Telluride, which is huge business, and we just everyone had to leave, which was government mandated. But what do you do with the reservations? What do you do with the money? And we had to make some decisions, and not all of them were right, but we communicated them, and we were able to control it. And I would much rather be in control of the narrative versus, people, like tons of people, telling me what to do or offering suggestions. It's powerful to be able kind of out front of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, let's head on over to number 7. Number 7, in an effort to not fail, I tried to involve myself in all matters. I forgot to trust the team, set very clear roles and responsibilities, expectations, goals, and then hold people accountable to those. You simply cannot do everything by yourself. So the superhero fallacy, Kevin, I hate to say this is a common one, but I think we've heard this a few times.
Oh, yeah.
What was kind of your evolution here, and what'd you learn from it?
I worked myself to death. I think most vacation rental owners or GMs or CEOs, whatever you want to call them, like that's what they do. I don't know if there's definitely a type control freak, help, high level of service. I really honestly, and this might sound like highfalutin, but like I really believed in the mission, and the mission for us was, deliver memorable vacations. That was us way long ago, and I had worked in the corporate world and knew how important those 2 weeks of vacation were. I live in paradise. I mean, I could turn my camera around and looks pretty nice outside, and I'm going to go take a very nice walk with my dog, or if you guys are down by the ocean, like you live in a really cool spot. You don't live inner city, New York, Chicago, somewhere, and you're working 50, 60 hours a week, and you have your 2 weeks of vacation. And I know things have changed a little bit, but like that is valuable time. And so when I was in that world, like I wanted everything to be perfect because I only had such a small amount of time and such a small amount of time with my family. And so I would lose my mind if it wasn't perfect. And so I very much tried to do the same thing, right? Like I wanted to have people have that same experience. I wanted, what I would say to the team was, we can control the booking process and we can control the home, right? Those are the things that we're responsible for. Those are the things that we have to get really close to perfect on. I can't control the weather. I can't control certain things. If a ski lift shuts down, that's out of my control. But of the things that I can control, we better be damn good for that reason. So that I don't know if I ever got better at that, and I think I should have done better with the communication side. We had budgets, we set goals. Each department had their goals, but it's very hard to. That's just who I think I am a little bit. Is I'm a workaholic.
You're not the only one, Kevin. Many other people said it too. Kirsten King, your friend, Lance Stitcher said the same thing. Andrew with Joseph Ellen Properties talked about, one of his mistakes was delegating sooner. Don't make the mistake thinking you have to do everything yourself. If trained properly, more often than not, your team can be better equipped than you in certain aspects of the business. Totally. I was actually at I'm in a group called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. It's a national group, and then we have like a local chapter here in Baltimore. And we had this keynote speaker come to our event, and he said something to the effect that really resonated with me. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it said something like, the width of your bottleneck in your organization is directly correlated to the amount of decision makers you have in an organization. If you have a small number of decision makers, you have to slow down decision making, and therefore you'll create that bottleneck. And ultimately, this is the number one factor that determines the ability for a company to scale. So if you have that small bottleneck, you're not going to scale. If you have a larger bottleneck, obviously you can scale. But yeah, I think you are not alone for sure. This is a common problem with most entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say that the words coming up here are going to be very common, Brooke. Number 8, getting distracted by shiny objects. Shiny objects probably is the most common word in the book. I hate to say it. Stay focused.
Do word count. See how often it comes up.
Yeah, quite a bit, unfortunately. Stay focused, do that one thing really, really well, and try not to get distracted by non-core activities. All right, Kevin, what's your shining object story? I want to hear.
Yeah, honestly, like I liked trying. It was more on like the product side, or what could we? Oh, could here's a new gift, or let's try. We tried to build a loyalty program just within our own little world. How did we do that? What is that based off of? Or different marketing ideas or discounts, or all the like, and some of that is just kind of what you do to try things out. But we tried a lot of, I would say, product related things like that, which would get super confusing. And oh, who's a VIP client? Who's in the what category, and what do they get, and is this owner like? So we tried a lot of that stuff. But honestly, like the one thing I'd say that we did pretty decent, honestly, is we were vacation rental. Like we didn't manage HOAs. We didn't manage homes that were non-vacation rental. We didn't expand beyond other markets. This was our market. I actually, my mom. There's a shout out to my mom. She made me my little thing that I had at my desk. It says focus. And I, that was the one thing that we actually did pretty well. So we would try a lot in the confines of vacation rental. But in terms of the actual business model, we stayed pretty true to it. And I think that was very helpful, right? There was opportunity to, buy into other parts of real estate, or, do certain joint ventures, or we actually stayed focused on vacation rentals. So that part we did, I think, pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else to expand on this one, Conrad, because we beat this
Yeah.
one to death. This one's been, it's definitely one of the top ones out there. So we'll leave it at that.
It's the fun
Awesome.
stuff, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's the fun stuff to do.
It's-
But
I think if you're a successful entrepreneur, you just have that gene. It's just who you are.
Yeah.
But recognizing that it's a bad thing and staying
Right.
focused is something you need to do. I should pass out horse blinders to all
totally.
all entrepreneurs just to keep them focused.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like a lot of things, like drugs and alcohol. It's like in moderation, it's probably fine. Let that gene, but when you take it too far, then you're in a bad spot. All right, let's go over to number 9 then. Rounding us out here, almost there. Number 9, not raising billable rates and fees over time. Don't set your hourly rates or housekeeping fees once and then forget them. Update them annually. So I guess this goes back a little bit, Kevin, to the property management fee discussion, but this sounds maybe like it was more on the vendor side. So what was kind of
Totally on the vendor side, and because they sure are, like anytime you're using vendors, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, their rates are $55 an hour. Ours are currently $35. Huh. And so just being knowledgeable of what's going on in the market, but also like one of our biggest line items behind obviously rent and commission, those two things, is cleaning, right? Like we were 7 figures in our cleaning line item. You want to, and it goes together, right? Like every reservation has a cleaning fee. So make sure the cleaning fee is profitable. And so we would look at all of the data when it came to labor. How much time is it taking to clean? The linens, the amenities, drive time, putting all of these things together. And early on, first 5 years, probably didn't do it. Even though I came from finance background, I should have been doing it. We just didn't. And then we started to, and you're like, oh, look at that. You should be making money on these things. And it's really, especially on cleaning, because for us, our cleaning line item was pretty large. Make money off of it, but you got to do the math. You can keep raising rate, but at some point there's some elasticity to that. It's do the math, see where your costs are at, and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, right on. Well, awesome. Number 10, we'll kind of bring into home here. This was a longer one, so maybe this will be a good hook for the Brooke book, or the book Brooke. That's hard to say. Couldn't get all those words out. Which is that to read the full one, you can pick up the book and go to page 74. But I'll summarize number 10, and maybe you could speak on this, Kevin, to bring us home here. I had bad days. It impacted my mood, and ultimately, the truth is that maybe there was moments where you weren't taking care of your own kind of mental health or kind of your outlook, and that might have impacted the team. So what was the lesson here? We talked about burnout earlier. What was the lesson
Yeah.
here as kind of the last mistake that you might have gone through?
Yeah, take care of yourself. Obviously, it is know how you're feeling that day. Like I always would say to people, or I learned, I should say, it was told to me. He's like, you don't have a poker face. I do not have a poker face. And so if I'm having a bad day, even if I'm not saying things, I'm not overtly, pounding my, screaming, yelling, throwing things. Oh, people know. There's an aura, and so, and I actually had someone say that to me, like, when you're having a bad day, it impacts the entire office. And I was like, but I don't say anything to anyone. Like, I'm not yelling. And they're like, yeah, we know. We just know. And so it's being super aware of that situation. Where are you that day? And luckily, I have a wife that owns and runs a CrossFit gym, and shameless plug. And I would go there, and my attendance is usually pretty good because it allows me to. It I like the working out part. I like how it makes me feel. It clears your mind. All of those things. But the other thing that I really, really liked about it is I'm not telling anyone what to do for an hour. I'm being told what to do. I go there, I do what I'm told, I work hard, and then I go back because the entire rest of my day, I have to be on point, telling people what to do, putting on a smiling, happy face. And so that is what I found. I found the thing that would allow my brain to kind of turn off for about an hour and just kind of reset, And people have bad days, right? Like, it's going to happen. Bad things happen, stressful things happen. But, you can get through them. You can get through them. And if you're healthier and, you're coming from a good spot, you can probably get through them a little bit better or
Yeah.
easier.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for being vulnerable there.
Yeah.
I actually love that. I've read that multiple times and I used it
Thank
throughout the book. So I appreciate you being vulnerable there and sharing that with us. And this is why we made it the bonus section in the book. Taking care of yourself. Don't take it personally, and don't forget to celebrate those wins either.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
something fun, Kevin, isn't there, about taking a medicine ball and just slamming it into concrete? Like,
It's great.
and it's like a primal thing. It's good.
Yes.
I also like to hit a little white ball like as far as I can too. That also gets stressed out very
And
well.
chase it,
So,
right?
yeah,
And then do it
exactly.
again.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Brooke, I think we got one more question to take us out here on Kevin, not part of his mistakes, but rather a retrospective. So, Brooke.
Yeah. So, Kevin, first off, thanks again for coming out here. We've been friends for a long time, so I really
Yeah.
appreciate you doing this. But
Thank you.
to round it, bring us home, if you could go back in time and talk to your 25-year-old self and give your 25-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be and why?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's funny because I'm turning 50 this year. I got married when I was 25, so I've been married coming up 25 years, actually next week. Um, I would say I would tell myself um, to trust myself more, and take chances, right? Like, there's a saying out there, military folks will say, you make a plan until that plan doesn't work, and then you make another plan, right? It's kind of as easy as that, right? Like, you can deal with it, and it goes back to a lot of the things that I had made mistakes on, especially number one was giving up equity. If I believed in myself a little bit more, and maybe came out of pocket a little bit more, or had one plan, tested that and went with it for a bit, and then made a different plan. Like, I would have told myself, because I think doing my corporate days, I actually had immense respect for the companies I work for, and I got an amazing education from these big companies. Wouldn't change that. But I think looking back and doing the entrepreneurial thing and the experiences that I've had, and the ability to grow, and try all of these different things, I think it would have been good to get those experiences earlier. And maybe have a company that failed, right? I mean, how many people out there had a company that failed and then they went on to make, yeah, exactly, like their next companies are X, Y, and Z. Like, I wish I would have gone down that route and gone, you know what, I can figure that out, because I have really enjoyed that part of my life over the last little bit. So that's what I would say. Trust yourself a little bit more.
Nice. Kevin, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We'll put a bow on this one for today. If people are looking forward to the next episode, we will have that dropping in the next week or so. So again, thank you so much. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks.